and welcome to Snake Therapy. I'm Shira, and this is Nymeria, the blue-eyed leucistic Colombian rainbow boa. Many people think that captive snakes don't need much besides housing, food, and temperature control to be healthy. But today, I want to challenge that notion. If we're keeping snakes in a captive environment, their welfare is in our hands. So I believe it's worth learning as much as we can about how to provide them with the best life, not just a life. So today, we're going to talk about enrichment and how providing it for snakes can improve their quality of life, temperament, and overall health, and how we benefit from that as well. So let's slither on into it. If you were stuck in one room for your entire life, you'd probably want some things to keep life interesting, or you'd be bored out of your mind, right? You'd also probably get weak and fat from lack of physical exercise. We paint our walls and hang art for visual stimulation. We put scented items in our homes to stimulate our olfactory senses. We eat different foods to stimulate our taste buds. We learn new things and seek entertainment to stimulate our brains and our imaginations. We play sports and go to the gym to stimulate our bodies. These are all types of enrichment. The word enrichment is simply defined as the action of improving or enhancing the quality of something. It's a well-researched fact that human brains and personalities develop better if they're stimulated and challenged from an early age. As we get older, if we don't continue to do this, we can easily lose our capacity to process and retain new information. We can develop memory and cognition problems. We provide training and toys to dogs in order to help their brains develop. We take them to dog parks and on hikes to enrich their lives. Why would it not be the same for reptiles or any other animal? Dogs without training and stimulation can act out or become depressed and unhealthy. Well, believe it or not, snakes can get bored and unhealthy if they're not provided with stimulation and enrichment as well. The actual enrichment method or tool might be different per species, but all living beings deserve a high quality of life. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums defines enrichment for animals as a dynamic process for enhancing animal environments within the context of the animal's behavioral biology and natural history. Environmental changes are made with the goal of increasing the animal's behavioral choices and drawing out their species-appropriate behaviors, thus enhancing animal welfare. The AZA categorizes enrichment into 5 components: cognitive, dietary, physical, sensory, and social. Without those components being met, a snake can develop stress-induced behaviors. These can represent as repetitive behaviors like rubbing their noses excessively against the boundaries of their enclosure or constantly moving around trying to find a way out of their situation, which can lead to injury. And after a long enough time of not finding an out, they can fall into a sort of depression. The helplessness of not being able to escape their limited environment and express their natural behaviors can lead to extreme lethargy or cause them to stop eating. They could also get so frustrated and stressed that they display overly defensive behavior, and therefore, interacting with them as a pet will not be fun for the keeper either. A healthy snake isn't just one that has the proper temperatures and a regular feeding schedule. These animals, when provided with different types of enrichment, can show curiosity, intelligence, problem-solving capabilities, and can be much more amenable to interactions with humans. There is a limited amount of research on snake intelligence, and because they're so different from other animals, it's hard to measure it with the experiments we've used for mammals, for example. But recent studies are showing us that snakes are not, in fact, the brainless worms we thought they were. I was thinking of doing an episode specifically focused on snake intelligence, so let me know in the comments if you'd be interested in that. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss it when it happens. The reptile keeping hobby is full of, shall we say, passionately opinionated folks. They're passionate about their love for the animals, but they're also passionate about their opinions on how best to keep them in captivity. And in my humble opinion, the quality of care we give our animals should not be based on human opinion at all, but on evidence and scientific research about the animal. Not about us. Just because a practice doesn't kill an animal doesn't mean it's best for its quality of life or overall welfare. I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers with this one, so although I do encourage you to weigh in the comments section, let's all be kind and respectful when we do so. To be clear, I am not saying that any one way of doing things is wrong, but what I will say is that each way produces different effects and outcomes for the health and well-being of the animal, and that when we take on the responsibility of keeping another living being in captivity, it's ethically imperative that we consider those outcomes and act to the best of our abilities for the most positive ones. There are a lot of people who keep snakes in small drawers or bins with no light or enrichment. Others are adamant that snake enclosures should be extremely large, naturalistic, or even bioactive to be acceptable at all. The former camp is usually comprised of snake breeders. They often have so many snakes that they'd need a huge warehouse, not to mention bank account, to provide large enclosures with lots of stuff in them for every animal that they owned. And technically, some snakes don't actually mind being in tight spaces some of the time, because even in the wild, some species would happily stay in a hidey hole until they needed to come out to eat, mate, and poop. So sure, as long as the temperature and humidity parameters are correct and the enclosure is being cleaned regularly, the snake can survive. However, all wild snakes would eventually need to venture out and exercise their natural hunting behaviors and use their muscles and brains in order to find food and reproduce. So if they're kept in a sparse, darkened drawer and just handed food when the keeper deems it's time to eat, or have a mate chosen and provided for them, they don't have an opportunity to, well, actively be a snake. Many beginner keepers who keep snakes in vivariums have a tendency to sparsely furnish them, and this doesn't allow the snake much more opportunity to exhibit its natural behaviors and locomotive habits than does a bin. I'll be quite honest here, I did that in my earlier days of keeping. But in recent years, I've made a concerted effort to learn as much as I can about how to provide my snakes with the care that better reflects their natural environments, putting consistent effort into research, experimentation, and observing the outcomes. The same thing may not work for every snake either. Each individual may show a different response to what you provided, because each animal is a unique individual. But that's part of what's therapeutic about keeping. You can get pleasure and enrichment yourself as you get to know your animal and how it responds to your care. Personally, I'm not interested in just keeping a snake alive. I want it to thrive, giving it the opportunity to develop its brain and personality, the ability to move its body. This is what contributes to the overall health of the animal, and in my experience, also improves the bond between us and the benefits that I can get in return. The United States Association of Reptile Keepers has a wonderful code of ethics, which includes the following statements. 1. USARK considers the health, well-being, and safety of reptiles and amphibians to be paramount. And 2. USARK on the specific requirements of any animal they wish to keep as a prerequisite to ownership. That's pretty clear to me. A snake's health and well-being is impacted by its access to enrichment opportunities just as a human's would be, and therefore anyone who keeps a snake in captivity should make an effort to provide enrichment in some form or fashion. If you keep snakes in tubs or racks, you can still take them out and offer them enrichment without providing it in their enclosure. It doesn't have to be just one way or another. So how can you provide enrichment for snakes? Let's consider those 5 components to enrichment I mentioned before: cognitive, dietary, physical, sensory, and social. Cognitive and physical enrichment can really go hand in hand. The cognitive type of enrichment is something that stimulates their brains. For example, a new item placed in their environment that they can go investigate. Physical enrichment means encouraging them to move their bodies and use their muscles. So those new items could also be things to climb on. I've built a few little jungle gym type structures that I let my snakes climb on when I take them out. Sometimes they just hang out on it. Sometimes they climb all over it and off of it. But the point is to give them the opportunity, whether they're active with it or not. Simply taking them out and putting them in a new situation, even if it's a tub with a different type of substrate, can encourage them to use their bodies and overlaps with the cognitive category of investigating something new. What you provide doesn't have to be fancy as long as it's safe, but you could also get creative with it and get some enrichment for yourself at the same time. Whether it's giving them new branches to climb, plants to sniff, or a PVC or paper towel tube to slither through, this kind of stimulation can challenge them to explore and be really enjoyable for you to watch as well. I recently decided to up my enrichment game for my snakes by buying a handful of dog, bird, and rodent toys and placing them in their enclosures. I saw almost all of the snakes come out to investigate their new toy right after I put it in. These soft honeycomb dog toys are great. I hung them from the roof of the enclosures and the snakes seemed to enjoy climbing through them. I made a PVC climbing structure for Anu a while back, but she didn't seem very interested in it. And when I replaced it with the ball, I put the PVC structure into Hobbs's enclosure instead, and he loved it. He was all over it for an hour or two afterwards. I placed this little hanging den made for rodent cages in Nymeria's tank. She loves it. She's in there every night now, and I'm already trying to figure out what I'll replace it with when she outgrows it. Her sister Galadriel is a bit less adventurous, but after a few days, I found her climbing on her toy too. And actually, she's a great example of how enrichment can benefit the health of a snake. Her tank was much more sparsely furnished when I first brought her home, and I had a lot of trouble getting her to eat consistently, and she likewise refused to switch from live prey to frozen thawed. But once I added a toy, several more hides, and extra plant cover, she started eating what I offered her. I want to note though that just because you don't see them using it doesn't mean they're not benefiting from it. Your nocturnal animals are going to be active while you're asleep, so most likely they're all over that stuff in the middle of the night. Give them the option. They deserve that at least. Sensory enrichment can be covered by some of the previously mentioned suggestions. It's really just anything that stimulates their senses. Something new to look at, smell, hear, touch, or taste. My first snake, Asia, loved didgeridoos. Snakes don't have ear holes, but they can hear, just at a lower frequency than humans. And didgeridoos are a lot of that. I had a friend back then who played one a lot, and Yuja would go right up to the end of it and investigate, and he even climbed up inside it once. I couldn't reach in to get him out, so I had to put the end of it in his enclosure and wait until he finally decided to come back out. Loved that thing. Dietary enrichment can be provided by encouraging them to move their bodies to obtain their food, figuring out a way to get to it if it's hidden, or by switching up the type of prey items you offer them. Snakes eat various types of prey in the wild, so giving them some variety will stimulate them more and could aid in their nutritional health. Just do your research on what the species eats in the wild to ensure it's appropriate and make sure that it's the right size for them to eat, and then switch it up now and again. Social enrichment is a little less important for reptiles than mammals, as most of them are not social with each other by nature. There's some species that thrive when housed together, like garter snakes, for example, but for many, cohabitation can actually cause stress. However, you could put their enclosures next to each other temporarily so they can check each other out through the glass, and as long as it doesn't cause noticeable stress, it can act as a positive enrichment. And just handling them yourself is a social enrichment. Taking my snakes to therapy visits with the little zoo provides them with a lot of that. They get to smell and feel and explore all different types of people, and it also provides them with the cognitive and physical enrichment of being in new environments and experiencing new things. In conclusion, enrichment is something that benefits all living things. You don't have to provide it in one certain way, but you should consider providing it regularly in some way. Always take time to observe how the snake reacts to whatever enrichment you provide, as their response to any one type of thing can differ by the individual. As long as it seems to stimulate them without causing them stress, then it can be beneficial to their health. So exercise your own brain and try new things. The time we spend watching their behavior and the effort we put into providing it for them can give us enrichment just as it does the snake. Providing enrichment for snakes isn't difficult, and a little time and effort can go a long way for their health and welfare. And I believe it's part of the basic responsibility of keeping. They may not wag their tails and thank you, but just knowing they're happy and healthy because you put some love and thought into it is one of the therapeutic benefits of what I call snake therapy. I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'm so grateful you're here. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video, hit that notification bell, and thank you to all my current patrons. You are contributing to animal welfare and mental health awareness, mine and the causes themselves. I am so grateful for you. Hop over to the Patreon page and join the community. Members receive ad-free and extra content, some special gifts, and of course my eternal gratitude. Patreon is a boon to creativity, and by supporting what you love, you get more of what you love. I'm Shira, and this is Nymeria, and we'll see you next time for more snake therapy. You're so cute.